I'm Dr. 𝐒𝐚𝐿𝐼 from Willing Ways Studios, Lahore. I work in Willing Ways as medical counselor, but today I'm conducting this show. The show is You Asked For It. Today we are going to discuss the most important aspect of addiction treatment. I will start with Dr. Sadaqat Ali. He is addiction specialist. He has a lot of contribution in Pakistan and across the globe. Thank you very much for being here, sir. Thank you all for being with us in this show. Let me first ask my colleagues to introduce themselves. Today they are participating in the discussion. I'll start with you, sir.
I'm Dr. Sadaqat. I'm working in the field of drug addiction treatment for the last 45 years, and I love to do my work. I'm very passionate about working with the paradigms of my clients, and I enjoy the phenomena of paradigm shifting experience.
Myself, Shumaila Batul, I'm working as a director and clinical psychologist at Willing Ways Lahore. I'm serving here to the families and patients with unconditional regard, empathy, and non-judgmental approach. My forte is OCD treatment.
I'm Jahan Ara. I'm clinical psychologist. I'm working here with the addicts and their families. I love to work with the families on their fears. I try to help them in intervention data writing. So I try to create a nice humor in their lives through therapeutic techniques.
I'm Ifa Imran and I'm a clinical psychologist working here in Willing Ways, Lahore. My line of work includes dealing with patients of addiction, depression, anxiety, OCD, and I enjoy working on emotional regulation with the families and the patients.
Last but not the least, I'm Nadeem Noor. I work as addictions and alcoholism counselor, and I work for Willing Ways. And I specialize in helping and training families getting rid of their enabling behaviors.
Dr. Sadaqat, I will start with you. There is so much to addiction, but how are you going to pinpoint to a certain factor which is most important?
Most important aspect of addiction treatment is enabling. The phenomena of enabling is central to all of addiction treatment. So if we want to promote the treatment seeking behavior, we need to stop all kind of enabling. Mostly the family members are the primary enablers. They are programmed like this. They know that helping others is something good, but they don't know that enabling helps the patient to continue his drug abuse, and all kind of enabling makes things look very normal, and the patient doesn't feel any pain and he enjoys the drug. When it comes to consequences, the family members take those on their shoulder. So for patient, it is a good deal that all kind of pleasure from drugs goes to the patient, and all kind of pains that emerge from the drug abuse of a loved one is delegated to the family members. There are traditional concepts embedded in the history that we think it very appropriate to help somebody who is in trouble. We like to make things normal again. Looking at the disease of addiction, which needs ongoing treatment, it is counterproductive to enable a patient in any way.
I think somebody start enabling, which is the behavior of the family, who are, in their opinion, in their perception, they are helping the person, but in fact, they are perpetuating the problem.
In any crisis that emerges from addiction and alcoholism, when patient feels the heat of it, the tendency or the treatment seeking behavior will emerge. But when helping that does not help, it only creates the perception that all is well. The treatment seeking behavior or the will to get better, it also goes down. So it is a downward spiral.
So, if I may ask all of you and whosoever wants to chip in, what is the mindset behind this enabling process for the family?
Enabling can be as innocuous and as pervasive and present as in the life of a small child. For instance, when a school going child, does not attend to his or her homework, the mother completes the homework. Feeling for the child that he may have to come up with the embarrassment in the class the very next day. They also think that in return the child will attend to the study more. This creates the illusion. Now look at the situation. The child, he ends up with this perception that it's all right. I have someone who feels about my goals more than I do.
So what is the perception of the parents? Because they are thinking what the teacher will say, he will get punishment.
The fear of the child
Getting the
facing the embarrassment in the class
consequences
pushes them to enable so as to save the child from the embarrassment. It's like rescuing the child in the short term for a day or so,
and long term with their create bad consequences.
and in the long term, giving that child a feeling that you don't have to
They're
attend to
there
your
for
duties.
him. They're there for him always, and they can fix anything.
And there is a culture of enabling in certain families, and it creates a very strong bonding amongst the family members. Although this is a pathological bonding, you will always see them bound together. They will continuously enabling and spoiling each other's life. But then there are other families which are naturally non-enablers. They will not enable each other, but they will drift away from each other. You will see the addicts and the alcoholics of such families on the street. The patients whom you see on the street, they are not born on the street. They are from the affluent families. So when there is a culture of non-enabling in a family, there is also a danger that they will drift away from each other. They'll fizzle out. They will be scattered. So that is also not desirable. We need to make families skillful to not do enabling and also remain
abandon.
closer to each other and help in each other's recovery. They behave in such a manner that their family member seeks the light and then seeks the treatment as well.
And I think they have to understand the difference between helping others and enabling. For
When
that,
helping somebody is hurting you, you need to understand that you are doing something wrong. Wherever there is pain, there is something wrong going on in the perspective.
Exactly.
Also, we need to realize that as human being, we need to help each other. But the goal and the purpose in mind is for the betterment of the other person, not for any ulterior motive.
I think helping someone is you do something for someone who's not able to do certain things, and we help the toddlers in walking and stuff like that. Enabling means you do something for that person who can do.
At the end, you are so much provocative because you are waiting for the reward.
And sometimes you are not waiting for the reward, but you start thinking yourself as a martyr. You start believing that you will have reward from the God. So they start more enabling when there is no reward for them, when there is no change. They increase the dose of love, they increase the dose of enabling.
So
This
there
is
are
what about the
certain,
charity?
certain benefits
This is
which
the-
are attached to enabling as well. And they are not only limited to the patient, they are also to do with the person who is an enabler. For instance, he or she can feel good about themselves. They can feel that they are doing the right thing. Actually, these rewards are also illusions. For instance, enabling is not a ticket to heaven.
Right now, we'll take a break. We'll be right back. Drinking per se is not a defect of character, but it can turn into alcoholism. It is treatable at any stage. Get help because he won't. Get help from Willing Ways. Get help from anywhere, but do get help now. You have waited too long for a miracle. Here it is. Get help. Get help. Get help. Welcome back. We were discussing about enabling, and this is a roadblock in the treatment of addiction.
But there is an interesting fact that only human beings enable. Animals are not
Animals don't
programmed
do
to
this.
enable. They help each other until it is necessary. But human beings have that special trait that sometimes they continue to enable their children when their children are able to do good to them. And when the parents are no more, then children have a lot of difficulty. They miss their parents in a negative way.
So the program we are doing is about enabling, and we all have our own perspective, our understanding of enabling. Like I would say, if there is enabling, the addiction is going to thrive. Enabling is any sort of behaviors from the family side in which we feel that the patient is not good enough to take care of himself, and when he's operating from shame, so whatever bad feelings, negative feelings, the family rescues him, doesn't want him to feel the pain, the consequences, and wants to, like, take care of him. So he never understands the brunt of the pain, the consequences of addiction, and is always taken care of. This is my feeling about enabling.
Enabling is a positive word apparently, but in the perspective of disease of addiction, it is a negative term. And that has come over time in the arena of addiction treatment. And now gradually everybody believes that it is the greatest hurdle in the way of treatment. When there is enabling going on around a patient, he doesn't have any desire to seek treatment. So if we want that patient should seek treatment on ongoing basis as it is a primary progressive illness, we need to stop all kind of enabling, because enabling is a phenomena in which family members take away the pain that is emerging from the active practice of addiction, and he is left with the pleasures of the drugs. So he starts believing that his drug is his friend, but the other people who enable and provoke alternatively are the enemies. So he would perceive those family members who are actually enabling the patient on regular basis, they would perceive them not as friends but as foes. He always recalls the provoking incidences, and he does not take much influence by the enabling their family members are doing. Enabling becomes a futile effort and goes to the back burner. That is why the patient is talking usually against the person who enables him the most, whereas the family member thinks that he has done a lot of service to the patient, whereas patient think that he has spoiled my life. It's a lose-lose deal.
So none is the winner. So what happens is that the enabler and the enablee both become victims.
Enabling is a way people around addicts interact with them. It is a futile way of helping a person coping with addiction. Enabling has many faces. It is lying for the patient, particularly for the problems emerging from alcoholism and addiction. For instance, if an alcoholic is unable to turn up in his office or some family commitment, the enabler, the family member, would lie that the person was very sick, thereby creating a perception for the patient that things are not as bad as they are. In a way, it is rescuing the patient and also rescuing one's own self in order to cope with addiction. It is a way of living with addiction and addict on a day-to-day basis. It is coping from the problems emerging from addiction. But in the long run, unbeknownst to the enabler, it is also a guarantee, a blank check to the disease of addiction that it will progress unchecked.
The random approach to stop enabling doesn't work. It has to be a systematic, step-by-step program through which we work on the enabling aspect of the addiction treatment. And we need to set time limits. We need to set tasks. We need to set workouts. The family members need to change their paradigms. They need to express their own views as to why they have been enabling, because it was their positive intention, not the negative intent.
Right.
But the result was disastrous. In the perspective for enabling, we often see a phenomenon that we call codependence. It is not an official diagnosis, but it is a common lifestyle of the family member of an addict or alcoholic, that they go through a certain kind of experience again and again. They develop a kind of lifestyle that they always chip in when he is in trouble because of his drug use. The codependence is also embedded in the history. People have this kind of programming that they would like to help somebody in trouble. The only person who can benefit from this pain is the patient himself. But families mostly take all of these pains and consequences on their shoulder, and patient is left with the enjoyment alone. Today, if we look at the kind of enabling that we see, we are convinced that we need to change. When we are talking about enabling, it benefits the patient in the short run, but he suffers even to greater lengths in the long run.
I think I would like to add something here. Family doesn't have this idea that they are doing something wrong with their loved one, because they have this perception that they are actually helping them. But in fact, they have the typical responses to advocate their point of view.
Exactly,
So-
Mr. Mylan. I guess there is a generational baggage as well. Because we have to help our loved one in any case. Like we can support them, we can talk about their issues, we can talk about their addiction. We have to hide them. Actually, we operate with the shame, guilt, fears. And they're the fears, like what people will say. So there is a toxic shame. So they'll start supporting him in enabling form.
And they think that this is their responsibility to save him from any negative consequences.
And I think it also stems from the belief that, other people are more important than ourselves. So we always put the needs of other before ours. That is why we feel guilt when we're not enabling someone, and we fail to realize in that time that it's actually harming that person in the long run.
And behind this kind of enabling, mostly there is shame.
Yes.
And people who enable the addicts and the alcoholics, they do not believe in self-worth. They believe in other worth. They feel a kind of guilt if they are not able to help in a certain situation when the addict and the alcoholic falls into trouble. But a lot of shame is behind all of this, that other people will come to know. So in future there will be difficulties for our loved one. They want to save him from the bad reputation today, and in the long run they assume that patient is going to get well very soon because he is promising again and again, and because of those false promises they fall prey to this pretext that they need to help a loved one so that his future is saved. So they are thinking about future when his present is in dire trouble.
The patient, periodically suffers from problems emerging from, accidents emerging from, crises emerging from, quarrels emerging from addiction and alcoholism. Enablers enable or help or rescue in a way so as to create the perception for the patient that it's not that much of a problem. the patient gladly adheres to that perception, and in the background, the addiction alcoholism keeps on progressing. This is how enabling makes sure that addiction moves on.
The family is generally transformed into codependents, and they are operating under the phenomena of codependence rather than interdependence. We need to promote the interdependence.
And what would that be? Interdependence is like you scratch my back, I scratch yours. They should be at par with each other, and the addict is not doing anything in return, rather creating problems, and you're rescuing him all the time. That won't be interdependence.
Actually, interdependence can be created if we work on crucial conversation, crucial confrontation, and assertiveness. All of these things, they together make families interdependent. And once interdependence is established, the patient will definitely start feeling responsibility to recover.
That means that codependence is not the goal, interdependence is the goal, enabling is not the goal. Rather, we have to set some boundaries, we have to set some goals, and then there should be feedback from the person, whether he's adhering to it or not. He should be transparent. Is it this direction that we should follow?
The most important aspect is that we cannot order the family members to stop enabling. This is not something that they can do through willpower, because there is some emotional disturbance that was established over a long period of time. So we need to work on their belief system first, on their paradigms. We need to work on the primary enablers, the family members who live under the same roof, and on all of them, because if one member will stop enabling and the rest of the members will not, that will be a futile effort. Primary enablers need to work on the tertiary enablers. There are people who are remotely connected with the patient, and they are sometimes relatives who are overseas, and they can be enablers sitting from the distance. They can do a lot of damage to the patient by helping him monetarily and in some other ways.
That's very interesting. We will carry on our discussion. Right now, we'll take a break. We'll be right back.
अच्छा, तो अभी तक तुम्हारा इस चीप लड़की के साथ चक्कर चल रहा है।
तुम कौन होती हो मुझे पूछने वाली?
ओके, और तुम इन घटिया लड़कियों के साथ गुलछर्रे उड़ाते फिरो, तो मैं चुप बैठूं।
Get out!
Drinking per se is not a defect of character, but it can turn into alcoholism. It is treatable at any stage. Get help, because he won't. Get help from Willing Ways. Get help from anywhere, but do get help now. You have waited too long for a miracle. Here it is. Get help. Get help. Get help. Get help. Welcome back. How can primary enablers start working on secondary and tertiary enablers?
We have to create a kind of cartel around the patient to stop enabling and block. And that can be done only after a lot of smart work. And the most appropriate time to work on enabling is while the patient is in a rehabilitation center. While the patient completes the indoor treatment program, the family becomes competent enough to stop enabling. And when patient is in the follow-up, the family is working continuously on intervention techniques. Usually the treatment starts with the crisis intervention or the family intervention. But post-treatment, it is very important that the family members continue to do the process intervention. And process intervention requires a lot of assertiveness. And in any interaction on a given day, if family criticizes on a certain behavior of the patient, they should try to undo any hurtful feelings that is done during that interaction, because criticism is something that nobody likes on earth. We quickly come back and undo the hurtful feelings generated in the patients. So that is how we continue to interact with the patient on daily basis, and we help him change his behaviors without hurting him.
We should not be enabling, but flip side of the coin of enabling would be provoking.
If we continue to criticize the patient, then along with the criticism, there is a danger that contemptuous behavior will also come into play. Then a patient would become very defensive. He can defend himself, but becoming defensive is something other than this. And he will not take responsibility or whatever he is doing. And ultimately, both patient and the families will be tired of each other, and there will be a stonewalling between them. So stonewalling is something which looks like it is going to promote some peace, but stonewalling creates a lot of emotional turmoil in both the parties. And the tragic end is that as addiction gives rise to character defects in the drug addict or alcoholic, likewise family members lie for the patient, they bribe, they do some unethical behavior to save the patient from the consequences of drug use. Enabling cannot be stopped immediately. It can cause a lot of emotional turmoil. We can design a program in that direction. We let the family members heal from codependence first and help them change their paradigms which are traditional in nature in our society, and we can also set a cutoff date for stopping the enabling, and there should be enough interval between the training program and the cutoff date when the family members will stop enabling and block. So we need about 6 to 8 weeks to prepare a family. We can definitely help the families heal from codependence. We can train them how to communicate it to the identified patients that the family members will stop enabling and block on a certain date. And we have to repeat it over time, almost every day, like advertisement on the television channels. It becomes believable. Things become believable gradually.
In fact, intervention techniques are more emphatic on the particular purpose that when we have to create the insight regarding the addiction disorder in the patient and family, educate that the process of intervention and the writing material we are providing them here. And the only idea is you can pinpoint the problem, you can create the insight into their loved one, but in a very respectful manner.
First of all, he may react to that. He doesn't want his notorious history of using drugs that result in the very painful things for the family. But gradually, as it is therapeutic, the patient is acclimatized and he starts receiving the intervention data in a positive manner. It is the duty of the family also to present intervention data in a receivable fashion.
In a respectful manner, we can say
In a
that?
very respectful manner, and keeping in mind that we choose our words very
Therapeutic
carefully.
words. There should not
We-
be a provoking
It
words
shouldn't
like
be shame-inducing.
Ultimately, it all boils down to the feeling. When we do it gradually and we do it continuously, then the idea is established in the mind of the patient as well as the family. So both are mentally prepared, and after a few days, when patient is in the follow-up treatment, then the counselors can monitor the progress, and if there are pitfalls and traps, they can be covered by the counselor adequately at the appropriate time. I'm a strong believer of the fact that as soon as the enabling is stopped, his recovery is likely, because that will promote the treatment seeking behavior in the patient. And the most appropriate time to work on this is when the patient is already in the treatment. But it does not mean that before the treatment you should not work on it. You can learn the ropes during any time before the treatment, and we can spread the words among the secondary enablers as well as the tertiary enablers that what we are going to do in near future is non-enabling behavior. So more we spread the word, more there are chances for the success that we are seeking in the recovery of the patient as well as the prosperity of the family. So, as counselors, it is our duty to focus on the whole family. It is the family system approach that we work on.
Family should learn how to deal with the patient. Family need to learn how to tackle pitfall and trap. Family should modify their behaviors, and that's what we are focusing on.
And most important aspect of treatment is also working on the paradigms of the family,
Exactly.
because without doing that we cannot move on, and it is not easy. We need to be very careful, but until and unless we work on their belief system, we are not going to have any progress.
We need to unfold their beliefs basically.
And the most important aspect
Redesign.
of the treatment is when we include the cognitive behavior therapy
Yes.
in the addiction treatment, because cognitive behavior therapy focuses on the thought
Thought
processes
process.
and believes that thoughts are the nuclei. Then there are accordingly
The
emotions
results.
which can be positive or negative, and those emotions will lead to certain behaviors which can be good or bad. So what we need to focus on is the thought of the family and the patient always continuously. And as we believe that the addiction treatment starts, but it never ends, because it is a primary chronic progressive disorder, and if untreated, it is going to be fatal.
Fatal.
But normally people think that if patient is not doing drugs, then he is already cured. It's not like being cured from addiction. You recover from addiction. It is not a model of perfection. It is a model of progression. Patient is under illusion that he has quit the drug, so he doesn't need any treatment. He will fall prey to disease of addiction one more time, and he will be then disappointed. The family will be also discouraged, and sometimes they quit all kinds of efforts to recover.
And that
One
is
failure is bad enough for any patient or family to push him back into the clutches of the addiction.
That's very interesting. We will carry on our discussion. Right now, we'll take a break. We'll be right back.
आज फिर भी कराया तुम? मेरा नहीं तो इन बच्चों का ही ख्याल कर लो।
बंद करो तुम अपनी बकवास।
लेकिन तुम अपनी घटियार को तो सिबाज मत आना। तुम हो ही घटिया इंसान।
तुम होती कौन हो मुझे रोकने वाली? तुम्हारे बाप के बाल की पीता हूं क्या?
Drinking per se is not a defect of character, but it can turn into alcoholism. It is treatable at any stage. Get help, because he won't. Get help from Willing Ways. Get help from anywhere, but do get help now. You have waited too long for a miracle. Here it is. Get help. Get help. Get help. Get help. Welcome back. We were discussing enabling, and this is a roadblock in the treatment of addiction. Sir, in your opinion, what is the best time, the most appropriate time to stop enabling and block?
Any time is the best time, but the most appropriate opportunity to work on enabling and stop it forever is while the patient is in the treatment center. The family members have ample opportunity in terms of time to learn how not to enable and stop enabling and block. So, first of all, the treatment center works on the primary enablers. Primary enablers are people who are instrument in the treatment of the patient, So primary enablers are first to be educated on this subject, and the counselors start working on them, starting with the pros and cons that family feels. Sometimes there will be other people who will suffer if we stop enabling with the patient, like children and the wife of the patient. So stopping enabling en bloc will prevent these dangers. Once everybody stops enabling, it is a very brief period of time after which the patient is motivated to seek treatment, and the negative impact of the disease of addiction starts receding, and things get better for every member of the family.
Because they have their justification to support that particular enabling behaviors.
Of
Over a
course,
period.
there is a lot of resistance from the side of the family, but we have ample time to keep working on them. We need to focus on getting them to write the intervention data. Intervention data is based on incidents which happened in the past, and everybody in the family was first hand witness to those incidents
During illness.
in which, due to doing drugs, there was some damage in the family, accident, there was some embarrassment. So intervention data is something that has to be presented during the treatment process also. Usually intervention data is presented to put patient into treatment, but if patient is already in the treatment, we can still present intervention data and repeat it over time, so that the family recovers from codependence and the patient also gets the fair idea that doing drugs has been proven to be disastrous in his life, and it becomes a regular therapeutic feature, and the pain that feels for the first time when intervention data is presented on the both side gradually lessens, and he has a deeper belief that after he goes out of the treatment center, and if there is a euphoric recall of previous experiences of using drugs, so there is a counter force against the euphoric recall. So you can present intervention data before the treatment to get the patient into treatment. You can present intervention data during the indoor treatment to get his ideas changed and understand that addiction is disastrous for him and he has to seek treatment on ongoing basis, and intervention data has to be presented after the treatment also, so that he can use that force when the craving sets in. He has a defense against that by recalling the intervention data which was presented to the patient many times over.
So that's like a software update.
Yes, repeated over time, it is going to be effective. So whatever we deliver during the counseling has to be repeated over time, because if there is an excellent idea and if it is not repeated, it can go wasted. But ordinary idea, if repeated over time, it is going to be very, very effective.
So the beneficiaries are on the both side, the added benefits and the family benefits.
As it is a family disease, so it has to be a family treatment and there has to be a benefit at the family level.
How do you break the cycle of enabling?
I mean, we can intervene at any point during a cycle. We can intervene while we are regularly provoking the patient. We can stop provoking, because provoking sets in the guilt process and ultimately we enable the patient. When there is continuous enabling, then we gather a lot of resentments and one day we are impatient and then we start provoking. So both processes work viciously, and the disease of addiction thrives on these two processes. If you break the cycle of provoking and enabling, addiction will wither off. It will not thrive. And addiction is a primary chronic progressive disorder. So you need to develop a new lifestyle Addiction faces difficulty in the face of newer treatment. We use neurolinguistic programming where mental distortions are interrupted, beliefs become weaker, and then they are eliminated.
So we need to identify their mistaken belief and then we need to address them slowly.
We need to support them during the process also. We should understand that burden might be more
Obviously.
than they can carry on their shoulders.
Right.
So we can always give them another opportunity. We can give them another tool to work with. So ultimately, when there is a lot of discussion around patients' addiction and life and the family dysfunction, they start understanding the newer concepts of intervention. So, whatever intervention you start with, ultimately you end up doing the process intervention, which needs assertiveness, crucial conversation, and crucial confrontation, healing the shame, and doing it often enough after the rehearsal. When we are dealing with the enabling on the part of the family, we have to work on the whole family. We have to work systematically. We have to work stepwise, and we need to set time limits. So, in my opinion, when we do this kind of work in our treatment center, Willing Ways, we start this work early on in the indoor treatment, and we tell patients also that uh, enabling is going to be stopped, and we give them anticipation that there will be no more enabling after you go out of the treatment center, and you have to think about it. You have to take responsibility for your recovery. You have to continue with follow-up treatment, because treatment of the addiction starts but it never ends. It is because addiction is a primary, chronic, and progressive illness, and whenever you stop it, there is going to be a reversal, and there is a danger of losing your life. It is not a matter of choice. It is a matter of having a good life or a very miserable death.
So to deal with enabling behaviors, there is a set of programs we have here for the families. It starts from the paradigm shift, way of thinking. They have to understand the underlying beliefs of the enabling. They have to come out from that pain, and then they'll become able to change the way of thinking. Instead of thinking that we are just helping him, they have to give the responsibility of the consequences of the addiction to that particular loved one.
And the most important aspect of stopping enabling is stopping enabling en bloc. Because if a few of the family members stop enabling, and the rest of the family members, even a weaker link in the family, or somebody who thinks that he is the kindest person on earth, will continue to enable the patient, it will rather sabotage your effort also. You spread the word of mouth around the patient, and the primary enablers are trained, and then they give training in turn to the secondary enablers and then to the tertiary enablers, and you set a cutoff date and continuously communicate it to the patient. And he might be a little annoyed in the beginning, but then he is kind of adjusted with that new fact, and he becomes of the opinion that don't repeat it but do it, because previously the family members have a history of giving threats to the patient and not following through. They talk about consequences and then they forget about it. They take a stand and then they reverse a stand. The only care that you need to be aware of while stopping the enabling does not mean that you are stopping the relationship.
Yes.
You have to be very courteous, you have to be very sensitive to the feelings of the patient. And when you talk to the patient, you always set goals. And when both parties agree on a certain point, then you follow through. You take care of the fact that nobody deviates from that, and if the promise is broken, you confront him. and confronting the patient requires you to have skill of crucial confrontation. When you do it nicely, you do it in a gentle manner. The purpose is not to hurt the patient, the purpose is to illuminate the patient. So when you do it enthusiastically also. There is not a glimpse of anger in what you do. And you continue to be a courteous person and be gentle in whatever you do. But when you say no, it has to be a genuine no, and you should stick by it. And by saying no repeatedly and smiling at the same time, having a good body language, ultimately you win over his opinion, you win over his heart, and you win over his feelings as well.
घटिया इंसान, इतनी देर से गेट क्यों खोला? सोए हुए थे तुम क्या?
सर मैंने तो मिनट भी
बकवास ना कर तुम मेरे साथ।
क्या कर रहे हैं आप? अब्बा जी घर पे हैं, नशे में गालियां दे रहे हैं। खुदारा होश में आए, क्या हो गया आपको?
होश में कैसे आऊं? सारा किया धरा इन्हीं का तो है।
Drinking per se is not a defect of character, but it can turn into alcoholism. It is treatable at any stage. Get help, because he won't. Get help from Willing Ways. Get help from anywhere, but do get help now. You have waited too long for a miracle. Here it is. Get help. Get help. Get help. Get help.